Hello and welcome to Strategic Compass. Today we are joined by Professor Jacques Sapir, who is teaching both in Paris and Moscow. In Paris, he's teaching at the School of Economic Warfare, and the title may surprise you, but he's teaching at the School of Economic Warfare. And then he's also teaching at the Moscow School of Economics. He's a well-known expert on Russian economy, particularly. He also follows the Chinese economy. I follow his analysis right from the beginning of the war and to this day. So if I'm telling our viewers in our Turkish programs why the Russian economy has actually resisted all the sanctions and the Western embargoes, if you like, much of it comes from Professor Sapir and from his writings. Professor Sapir, welcome to our program. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for joining us today. Well, shall we just get going immediately to make the best use of the time, actually? Now, the first thing is, can you give us a evaluation of the Russian economy and why and how it has actually stood quite firmly against all the sanctions that the Western world have imposed on Russia since the outbreak of the war? In our, a year ago, when we talked about all this, you said that the Russians actually transformed their economy from 2014 onwards, in particularly, expecting that something of this sort might come up. Yeah, can you give us a brief overview of that, please? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Since the last year, economic growth has slowed, but not because of sanctions or because of any intervention from Western powers, but mostly because of the anti-inflation policy implemented by the Central Bank of Russia. As you know, they hiked the interest rate, the first rate, as they called, up to 21% by the end of 2024. And then they slowly lowered down this rate, but it is still very, very high, over 16%. So that nearly stopped the growth, at least in summer. The figures for growth in late June, July, August, and September were not good. The Russian economy not contracted. She still evolved toward growth, but at a very, very slow level. For October, the results are better. The credit activity has again risen up, and we will probably have, on a yearly basis for October, a growth between 1.5% or 1.8%. Of course, it's much slower than last year, where we had 4.3% rate of growth, but it is still a growth, and it is still better than in the European Union. In the same time, the Russian economy continued its transformation and has succeeded in some sectors, not in all, but in some sectors, to become absolutely independent from foreign import. That's the case for civil aviation, and they made the first flight of two commercial jets, the MS-21, which is a more or less equivalent with the new Airbus 320, and of the superjet the former Sukhoi superjet, which is now built by Yakovlev in Irkutsk, and it is now a completely Russian plane. You know, all the components are coming from Russia. There's other sectors where they succeeded in replacing importation by Russian products, mostly in chemistry, also part in mechanics. Of course, they are still importing a lot of technological products, but much less than precedently, to the point that by 2022, importations of technological products were more or less equal to 21% of Russian GDP. Now they had fallen to 16%. So reduction by 5%, nearly 1/4.
In terms of imports.
And in terms of imports, which is quite impressive in 3 years. Of course, it's not all, and I'm quite sure that never Russia will become again a kind of autarkic economy. It's not the goal of the government, but they're replacing, they're substituting importation by Russian products in some high priority branches or sectors.
Well, now, what you are, I mean, the picture you are basically presenting is quite a big success on the part of Russia compared to what has happened to those countries who have sanctioned Russia. Basically, they placed all these sanctions on Russia, thinking that the Russian economy was going to be destroyed as a result. Now, and Russians not only actually stood up to the sanctions quite successfully and effectively, but they have managed to build passenger planes now, which is roughly the equivalent of Airbus 321 or that is. So, I mean, how could they do it in that sense? So, and how would you also respond to those? For instance, there is quite a number of them in Turkey who would say, well, you know, the Americans basically and the Europeans have destroyed the Russian economy. Russian economy is bleeding. Russia is bleeding, and these are the people who haven't been to Russia recently. But I go to Russia. You go even more frequently, and you teach there even. And I say to them, well, I don't see the signs of destruction of Russian economy. If anything, I see the opposite of that. What are your actually observations with that in that regard?
Well, there is a very strong rebuilding of the industry, and most of all of the manufacturing industry. And to some extent, the raw material sector is more or less stagnating. But of course, after the very big growth in 2022, you know, this growth which was caused by the sanction, by the way, it is no more or less stagnating. But what is extremely impressive is first, the rebuilding of the manufacturing industry. The second point is also the growth in actual wage, you know, in real wage. Real wage have increased by 10% in 2023, by 8% in 2024, and this year they will probably increase by more than 4.5%, which is a very, very impressive achievement. By the way, this achievement is also linked to the fact that the labor market is more or less exhausted. That's very, very clear that some months when the Russian economy has been topping a figure of 76 billion of people who are working in the economy, and there are no progress.
76 million
Yes.
people
Yes,
actually employed.
Yes.
In the
that's
Russian
right.
economy.
Yeah.
Well, out of a population of 140,
Yes, exactly.
more than 50% of the people. So, I mean, what you are saying is almost there is no unemployment at all.
Yes, absolutely. The unemployment, as computed by the OIT, is more or less equal to 2.1%. And what is even more important, when you are looking on a Russian document, you could see that the average time in unemployment is under 5 months. So that means that even with this very, very low level of unemployment, most of people unemployed are only unemployed on a frictional basis. They're unemployed between leaving a position and taking another position, well, between 4 or 5 months. Okay, that's very impressive. Then we have also the development of agriculture. Of course, it has been affected by weather, the weather conditions in 2024. 2025 has been much milder, and now the agricultural production has increased by 7%. And then we have the development of services, and the services are booming also, but at a much lower rate than the industry. But what is extremely important is that since 2022, if you are computing, the level of production of this October by comparison with October 2022, the increase in manufacturing industry is 29%. 29%.
Incredible.
Yes, this is a very, very big push in manufacturing. And now the level of industrial production in the GDP is probably over 26%, which means it's over the one of Germany. Of course, it's under the level of China. China has the most higher share of the GDP made by industry, around 40%. Okay. But with 26%, Russia is probably the second country in the world for industrial development. That's extremely important, and that has also highly, very important consequences on regional development, because that means that the region where the manufacturing industry is concentrated in the central region, what the Russians call the central region is around Moscow. And around Moscow, it's on a radius
Moscow
of
region,
of 500 kilometers. Russia is a very, very large country, by the way. And after that, the region which is between the Volga and the Urals, which is called in Russian Volga-Vyetka. It's the Volga-Vyetka Federalny Okrug, the Volga-Vyetka regional district. In these both regions, the level of unemployment has went down to 1.6%. That's absolutely incredibly low. But that means also that the Russian labor force is more or less exhausted, and that Russia will need immigration in the next years We know already that large Russian firms have opened offices, recruitment offices in China. They have opened recruitment offices in Vietnam, and they will probably open recruitment offices in India. I think that one topic which has been discussed between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi has been this point. So I think also that immigration is to be an important factor of development of Russia in the next years.
So basically, the Russians actually, in terms of manufacturing industry, has been making wonders, as you explained. What about those who sanctioned Russia, like Germany, like France, like continental Europe and Britain? Now, can you give us a picture of their losses? Their losses in many respects. For instance, I knew that Germany was exporting to Russia enormous amount of goods. So by not buying Russian energy, which was cheaper, much cheaper than the energy that they are actually importing now from various sources, plus they were able to export to Russia enormous amount of goods. And I should think that the other European countries have also lost out a big market.
Yes, certainly. Actually, in 2021, the cumulative weight both of imports and exports towards the European Union was 47% of the Russian foreign trade. It has sunk to 24%. It has nearly halved.
Yeah.
Of course, there is still German exports in Russia. You can still find new German cars in Moscow streets. I had a very interesting discussion with a Mercedes dealer in Moscow, and he explained me, yes, we are still importing these very expensive German cars. Of course, we are taking, some very specific routes to import. That is, we are not importing straight from Germany because it's forbidden, but we are importing through Armenia, through Turkey, actually, and also through Uzbekistan. As a result, the price is increased by 20%. But sir, someone who can pay for a huge Mercedes 500. Okay, 20% more, it's not a problem for him. Now, for the medium-ranged car, imports are coming from China. And this is also extremely impressive in Moscow streets, the number of new Chinese cars, and not the bad ones, the most modern ones, the fully electric ones, BYD mostly. Yes, Russia is still importing manufactured goods. It is still imported goods from Germany, also from France. I was quite surprised to find in the GUM, the very big store in Moscow, absolutely new French perfume, and it was exactly the same story than for the Mercedes. The lady was running the shop, told me, yes, of course, we can't import this perfume and this cosmetics straight from France. So we have established a joint venture with a company in Armenia, which is importing them from France and exporting them to us. Of course, that increased the price. Yes, she told me a quite different story. She don't say me 20%. She was speaking between 10 or 15%, but still it's an increase. And saying, well, okay, but we have still a lot of customer for that. So as you can see, the trade between the EU and Russia has not been cut off, but it has considerably reduced. And the consequences for European countries has been a high rise in energy price. And by the way, when you're looking onto the monthly statistics, you are seeing that the more energy prices are rising, the more the industrial production, the German industrial production, is reducing. Germany has probably lost 4% of its industrial production in 2023, and again 4% between 2024 and 2025. I have to point out that there's the first time since Second World War, or that's the first time since the existence of new Germany, of democratic Germany, that the German industry has reduced to such a level. And the situation is also not very good in France. We are still in a better shape than Germany because the situation is extremely serious in Germany. We are still in a better shape than Germany, but as you know, we have also this this huge political problem with the budget. The budget is still not voted now in France. And by the way, if we had a growth, this growth will be under 1%, probably between 0.8 or 0.9. In Germany, there will be a zero growth or even a contraction by a minus 0.5, 0.6. We have also a stagnant growth in Italy, and in Netherlands, we have a growth of 0.5. So as you can see, different Western countries are extremely affected by the boomerang effect of sanctions, to the point that, and I have talked with German people who are still working in Moscow, and you have still a small community of traders, of German traders in Moscow, and they told me, we can't understand, all nations is committing a kind of national suicide. We can't live without the cheap energy that Soviet Union and then Russia has furnished to us. So we have to make something. And I really believe that in the next months, the German industrialists, the German entrepreneurs will probably tell their government, well, we had enough of these sanctions. These sanctions are strangling us, and on the other side of the pond, we have Donald Trump tariffs on imports. So we can't survive with both, with tariff on imports from the USA and without the Russian low-priced energy. we had to make a choice.
Well, I mean, we have been talking about the economic side of the matter, but would you say a few words at least about this economic suicide in Germany, as well as in almost in the rest of Europe, including even Britain, because all this economic backlash is certainly leading to all sorts of political turmoil in all those countries. For instance, in Britain, the situation is quite dismal. Young people under 30 and under seem to be saying that democracy doesn't work anymore. They need strong leaders. They need, a new type of administration that would deal with all these economic problems. They're also talking about immigration and what have you. So migration rather than immigration, they are against it. And as you explained, in Germany, the situation is equally dismal, if not worse. In France, maybe slightly better, but only slightly. Now, why are all these governments basically dragging their food?
Well, it's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to understand. My opinion, but it's only my opinion, is that the French, the German, the British government are the prisoners of the former speech and of the former talks they had on the Ukrainian war. When you began to say, well, Ukraine will win, the Russian army is a bunch of crap, they're fighting by using the microchips they found in washing machine and things like that. Okay. And when you are facing now a Russian army which is advancing, of course slowly, but which is advancing, a Ukrainian army which is decaying, which is falling apart, the number of desertion in the Ukrainian forces, and I am speaking only of official figures, figures which has been published by the Ministry of Justice of Ukraine, and which has been also published during the debate in the Ukrainian parliament, the Rada. People are talking of 160,000 desertion only for the 9 first months of the year.
106.
Yes.
169,000.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yes. Huge numbers.
It's huge.
Almost like a quarter of the Ukrainian army, or perhaps a little less. But
between 1/5, 1/5 and 1/4. Okay. And our governments, people in charge, are unable to switch their speeches and are unable to face the reality. And that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem because at one time or another, Ukraine will have no other solution than to accept the terms of the peace made by the Russian government. That could not please us. That certainly will not please the Ukrainian population, but it's a fact. And our governments and people in charge will have to prepare for that, to prepare the public opinion for that, and to prepare us to face a situation where Russia will have win, whatever the meaning of winning a war could be, but have win the war, and we will have to prevent a complete failure of the Ukrainian state. And it is a fact that people now are not speaking of that. They are still speaking, yes, we will furnish new weapons to Ukraine. You're asking them, when? 2027, 2028. People, if you want to give weapons to the Ukrainian army, you have to give them now, not in 2 years or in 3 years, you know. That will be absolutely of no use by then.
Of course.
And now that we don't produce enough weapons. The same thing with the American government. The American government has promised the Ukrainian government to give them some Patriot missile for the Patriot system, you know that, air defense system around Kyiv and different big cities. And they discovered they have no more Patriots to give. So they turned to Israel. And they asked the Israeli government, could you give some of your Patriots to Ukraine? The Israeli government agreed, but gave to Ukraine very old missile more than 10 years old, which are of absolutely no use for the Ukrainian. These missiles are easily evaded by the Russian missile. And it's also a fact that when you are looking to figures, and I'm again speaking of Ukrainian figures, you know, for that, the number of Russian missiles destroyed by the Ukrainian air defense, which has been in 2023 and 2024 between 40 to 50%, 1 on 2, okay, has fallen to only 15%. So it's a fact that nothing is preventing Russia to destroy the Ukrainian industry, to destroy infrastructure, to destroy the power industry of Ukraine. And no country could survive this kind of destructions. So this is a fact, and this is a fact against it. Europe, France, Germany, Italy, the countries that are producing weapons can't not give any improvement. We have sent 1 missile battery to Ukraine, and for a good reason. We had 9 of these batteries, so we sent 1 on 9 batteries, and of course we want to keep the other to defend the French territory.
Of course.
So we have no more weapon to give to the Ukrainians. It's a fact, and this fact will force, not the next week, unfortunately not the next month, probably by the end of spring 26, but will force the Ukrainian army to ask for a peace under Russian terms.
Well, I'll come to that. You know, the peace proposal by Trump, in particular, the 28 points. I'm sure you've gone through all of them as I've done. Now, before then, there's one little question I'd like to raise. That is Trump's, relentless efforts at imposing an overall embargo on Russian oil exports. It has been sanctioning all the countries and all the companies buying Russian oil and using Russian oil and all that. How is that affecting Russia's exports? Because I occasionally come across reports, even it has it has been affecting even the Chinese companies importing Russian oil. Is that correct? Or is it been, again, one of those inflated stories in the Western media?
It's a very inflated story. You have a very simple way to check it. Look at the spread between the Brent price and the price of the Sokol, which is the Russian brand of oil, which is sold on the world market. If sanctions have been useful, the spread would have increased, the Sokol price would have fallen down, and the Brent or the WTI will have increased. As a matter of fact, the spread has not changed for the last 3 years. So effect of sanction, absolutely known. Now, Trump has even admitted that, as he has considerably reduced the sanction onto the Lukoil companies. You know, it's one of the two companies which has been hit by sanction, Lukoil, and then he decided to reduce considerably the sanctions against it. And one side effect of these sanctions, of this threat of sanctions, more precisely, has been to push India into Chinese arms. So it was exactly the nightmare of any US government that India, which was still hesitating between China and the West, will turn completely to China. And this has been achieved because of Trump threats. You know, it's absolutely incredible. And now India is welcoming President Putin. And you can see on the Indian website, you know, the website of newspapers and of the TV channels, the result of this visit. And it's absolutely obvious that relationship between India and Russia are going for the better. In the same time, relationship between Russia and China are obviously very, very, very good. So what has obtained Donald Trump? Nothing. And now he is more or less acknowledging it and saying, as a matter of fact, okay, peace will be done on Russian terms. Of
exactly,
course, not all Russian terms, but mostly Russian terms. And he's trying to explain to Zelensky that he had to accept it or to disappear.
Yeah.
So we will see.
What's your, what's your feeling about that? You know, in the end, it seems Zelensky will have to either sign up to the peace proposal, or he will have to evaporate somewhere, you know, in thin air, because there doesn't appear to be any strong constituency that can actually keep him going. The European economies are too weak to sustain the war, although when it comes to talking, they talk very big, very lofty. But when it comes to real, you know, nitty-gritty details in flesh, there is no flesh, no bones, no flesh. So what is your feeling? You know, in the end, Zelensky is going to have to accept the peace terms as proposed by Trump?
Yes, I think only two options. First option is Zelensky is having its own Mannerheim moment, you know, like Marshal Mannerheim of Finland in 1944. Marshal Mannerheim was a staunch anti-communist leader, but at one time he told the Finnish people, we can't continue the war. If we continue the war, Finland as a nation will disappear. So better to accept to lose some territories, to accept some harsh conditions, but still preserving the sovereignty of Finland, than to lose everything. Okay, so either Zelensky will have his own Mannerheim moment, and he could do it because he has acted very courageously in 2022. You know, if he is now saying, well, people, we can't stay in the war anymore. We are exhausted. Yep. It's a problem of survival for Ukraine. People will believe him. And if he is not able to do that, he will probably be replaced by who? This is, of course, a big question. Some people are speaking about Zaluzhny, who is now ambassador in Great Britain and was the former chief of staff of the Ukrainian army. That's a possibility. There's other possibilities. But I think that decision time will come probably between February and the end of spring of next year.
We are fast coming to the end of our interview, but just one little question. You've been also following the Ukrainian economy, and then there's been now a serious fraud investigation into the Ukrainian politics. And Yermak, the right-hand man of Zelensky, has had to leave office. And people think that it is going to come and hit Zelensky too. And, I remember from even back in 2014, the Western newspapers branding Ukraine as the most corrupt country in Europe. That hasn't changed for the better. It may have actually changed for the worse during the course of the war. And even in the years preceding the war. So what is your feeling, that corruption investigation, has it been somehow manipulated by the United States to basically force Zelensky and his government to wake up to the realities on the ground?
That's a possibility. That's a possibility. It's not to say that the corruption scandal has been invented. No, we all know that corruption was present in every day in Ukraine. And I am not talking about small corruption. I'm speaking about high-level corruption to an incredible level. You have just to look at the number of wealthy Ukrainians living in Monaco. I have a friend who is working in the Monaco casino. He's one of the head of the casino, and he's explaining me that now the customers are at 30 or 35% Ukrainian. Okay, so
my God.
It just
35,000.
Yeah, a kind of indirect proof of corruption. Okay. So this scandal would have exploded one day or another. Now, the Ukrainian institution, which is tasked to fight the corruption, the NABU, has been trained by the US government, is funded partly by the US government. So we can reasonably think that the scandal has exploded now because the US government want to put the pressure on Zelensky. But I would say it's not the most important thing. Everybody knows that there was a huge level of corruption in Ukraine. What is the most important thing is the fact that the Russians are methodically destroying the Ukrainian economy. they have destroyed a large part of the power system. Now people, and some of my former colleagues of the Ukrainian Academy of Science, economists like me, are telling me through the internet, they have electric power, 4 hours on a day.
Only 4 hours a day?
Yes. No eating, no water, because to have water, you need electric pumps. So they have water only 4 hours on a day, and the weather has not been really frigid for now. It will be in the next weeks. So they're telling me the life is becoming unbearable now, and we are seriously thinking to immigrate, either in Germany or for some of them in France. Okay. So with the destruction of the economy, Ukraine will be quite quickly in a situation where Ukraine could not support the war. Because to support the war, you need to produce armament, you need to produce munitions and things like that. And without electricity, how could you do that? So I think that we have not realized the amount of destruction that the Russians have done into the Ukrainian industry, and the more so because now the anti-air defense of Ukraine is more or less important. It's not the situation of the last year. Last year, they were downing 1 missile over 2, which was not good, by the way, which was not a good result. Now they are downing only 15% of incoming missile. Okay, so we have this fact, and this fact, I think, will first economically push Ukraine onto the verge of completely collapse, and will strain the population to a considerable extent. Already, and I'm speaking of July figures, of July 2025. In 2021, there were 41.5 million of Ukrainians, of inhabitants. Now, 28.5. And if things are continuing, there will be probably immigration of between 3 to 5 another millions. So Ukraine will become an empty country. No country can survive in this kind of situation. And that's why I'm saying the quicker the Ukrainian government will understand that it needs to agree to peace, whatever this peace will be, the better for Ukraine.
Well, yes, you are actually also describing a situation which is very much like the days leading up to the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, that miserable situation. And we'll see what happens, but it's clear that not good days are ahead for the Ukrainian people in whatever happens. Well, Jacques, thank you very much. It's always been so great and so nice talking to you about these matters. And of course, I'll keep following you on the internet. And Jacques has an account on Twitter. I would certainly recommend it to everybody who wants to follow it. Although he does it mostly in French, but they can get the translation. Fortunately, my rusty French helps me to understand it. So thank you very much. And
thank you.
Hope to see you again, perhaps even personally.
Yeah.
And for the time being, thank you again.
Thank you very much. And yes, I hope to be able to come for more than some hours in Istanbul sometimes next year.
Well, okay, then let me know, please. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we have hosted on our program Professor Jacques Sapir, who's been an eminent professor on economics, particularly on Russian economy. He's a Russian speaker. He teaches at Paris and Moscow, and he's given us a wonderful picture of what has been happening. Well, though the situation is not wonderful, perhaps, but the picture he has given us basically is just excellent. Thank you very much again for watching us. Yes, and until the next program, when we are going to be with another expert on another topic. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.